There we go. Those weekly fresh beats that we've come to know and love. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Freightonomics. I am Zach Strickland here with, as always, Anthony Smith, our lead economist here at FreightWaves. I am the director of freight market intelligence, so they tell me, and we are here to discuss, what's happening in the freight market as it pertains to the overall economy. Combine those two things, and basically inform you with, how things are working right now and how they're connected. Anthony?
That's right. I mean, it's a beautiful pairing when you pair freight and economics together. It just makes sense. And this is Freightonomics. Like Zach said, I am Anthony Smith, lead economist here at FreightWaves and market expert director. And today, Zach, we're in the trenches.
We're in the trenches. We got a big day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in the trenches. You have been so kind as to, locate your cousin,
That's
Chris
right.
Bryant, who is a flatbed owner-operator, and he is going to give us some eyes on the road to let us know how what his experience has been like here over the last couple of months, year, et cetera. Just to, it's always helpful, I think. We have a lot of data on this show.
Yeah.
We provide a lot of that, but I think it's also helpful. One of our mantras here at FreightWaves is that we provide some of that tribal knowledge, that context that you need to really get a deeper understanding of what the data means. And I think this is exactly what we need right now. We've been talking about our volumes and tender rejections, capacity, of course, super tight. Volumes are growing. It's one of those times where it really helps to hear somebody else's, that's in the stuff.
Yeah.
I've been removed from it for a few years now. My own visibility is straight through the information that we have here, and of course our contact with our various people that like to come on FreightWaves and FreightWaves TV and interact with us. But I think this is a good chance for us to get in and get somebody with some real context on the road. You're monitoring LinkedIn, right?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. And just as you said, I mean, we watch these data sources closely. As an economist, I'm watching monthly releases. And as a freight economist, I'm watching some of our internal indices that are near real-time data sets that shows what just happened yesterday. But when we're looking at those who are actually actively in the midst of what's happening right now, they're the ones that can tell us what's actually happening on the ground, what are the new trends that they're actually seeing before these data sets come out on a monthly basis, weekly basis, or what happened yesterday. They know what's actually going on. But without further ado, I mean, we got to jump into it.
Well, we got to jump into it, but first, we've got a big story.
Yeah.
We normally, for those of you that consistently view us and listen to our podcast, we like to cover the story of the week. And of course, there's no bigger story for the freight market right now than Hurricane Laura that's bearing down. We had Marco, kind of a non-event, dropped some water over Louisiana, et cetera. And so it's, one of those things, the freight market, it definitely has, it has the potential to be a huge disruption to freight flow in the United States. Not necessarily in the way that it's going to, it does pause activity in the areas that it hits, which it more than likely will in Louisiana. Again, but Louisiana is not... Yeah, there's freight down there, but it's not a huge freight market. You've got a big interaction between Houston and New Orleans and kind of that Arklatex region. We have a little bit of a triangle of activity down there. Not a huge amount of freight, though, relative to, say, like a Southern California and Atlanta, Chicago, for instance. These are more hubs of the freight market, but at the same time, if a hurricane hits and then it has, an $80 billion economic impact, that's a lot of freight.
Yeah.
That's a lot of freight. That's a lot of recovery efforts that get involved here. So Laura scheduled to hit the coast of Louisiana here tonight into early tomorrow morning with Category 3 plus force. So that's going to be 115 mile an hour winds plus, which means it's a major hurricane, catastrophic damage possible in a lot of areas, and then it's supposed to zip on up through Arkansas and then make a hard right turn over Tennessee and Kentucky before exiting the East Coast later in the week. And so to me, Anthony, the important things to take away here.
Yeah.
You've got a big hurricane coming down there. We've seen tender rejection rates decline out of some of those markets like Houston, Little Rock, Memphis, as carriers are basically trying to move out of the way or potentially position themselves in a way that they can be a part of the recovery effort.
Yeah.
Not just because they're trying to be good citizens, which a lot of them are, but recovery efforts do pay quite well if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I would caution any carriers, of course, that any of them that have had experience with this type of activity before knows what I'm talking about, but detention is real. You are basically part of the federal emergency management team. At the moment that you accept this, you waive your hours of service requirements, and then you're part of the team. And you could be, moving one load for multiple days as you sit and wait for your trailers to get unloaded, et cetera. Detention is a real concern, but if you manage it right, of course, you can make a good bit of money.
Yeah.
What that does to the overall freight market, why you should care if you're not involved in the recovery effort, if there is one that's needed, which more than likely there's going to be some level, I would argue, we're looking at a minimum of a $20 billion hurricane here, probably more, just because of the sheer size. And the longer that it stays strong over, some of these areas like Arkansas that aren't used to this wind field being so strong, that's just going to have more damaging effect. Now, the flooding, another issue, not sure if it's going to be that big of a deal for Arkansas and north, obviously some flash flooding. But a majority of the damage from these storms does tend to come from flooding, not necessarily wind, but it's the water damage that does that. And this is not as big of a concern for this storm, but it's probably going to impact a large swath of area with wind damage. And then, of course, there will be some flooding in spots in these areas. So. Yeah. Anybody that's out there looking to, they really need to pay attention to this storm here over the next week. Your carrier, shipper, broker, doesn't matter. Carriers and brokers obviously know about it. Shippers, some of them may not know that it does have an impact to your region. The larger the storm system, the more you need to be concerned, even if you're out in Southern California and you're shipping freight. Yeah. A lot of these trucks get stuck in these recovery issues, so it will consume some amount of capacity in an already tight market. Tender rejection rates up around 25% right now. We got Labor Day coming up here in a week or so, a week and a half. Capacity is going to be tight here over the next 2 weeks. You have to pay attention to it. It's going to be a wild, spot on for 2020. Am I right? Yeah.
I mean, not too surprising. And you mentioned, hours of service waived going into it. A lot of ramp up beforehand, and there's going to be a pretty significant impact afterwards, right?
That's really the key, is when we're talking about hurricanes, it's not necessarily the direct hit or while it's there. It takes months for areas to recover. We saw with Harvey, Irma, this had a lasting impact for the freight market that was reverberating through, December after it hit on Labor Day. So again, I don't think this is going to be to that same scale. Like Harvey was almost a $200 billion infrastructure event, which, again, I think I said $20 billion on a low end. And again, I'm no insurance specialist, so don't take my word for it. But when they do finally get those numbers, which will be weeks after the fact, another point of reference, Michael, Cat 5 hurricane hit the Florida Panhandle a few years ago. It was less than a $20 billion event because it was a Category 5 hurricane, super strong, but it hit effectively nothing. No population. Not a big freight market area, a lot of tourist activity down there. So it didn't have as much of an impact. This one should be stronger than Michael in my estimates. That's why I say $20 billion minimum, because it's going to push up over, the Little Rock market, for instance, Memphis, Little Rock. There is a lot of freight that interacts with those markets. So there should be a pretty decent impact there. How significant of an impact? I'm not so sure yet. Going to be hard to discern what's hurricane related and all just 2020 COVID activity related at this point.
And there's definitely been a lot of activity or things that have happened in 2020 that we haven't quite seen historically, and so a lot of trends that we've seen in the past are no longer at play here. And definitely in the past, when I've seen hurricanes hit heavy areas or areas heavily, of course, as you mentioned, there's that big recovery effort, but then of course there's that rebuilding effect. So as my time as a corporate economist in the building products industry, we definitely saw an influx of building products materials, whether it be siding, roofing, or just framing material. And so we've already seen that really kind of ramp up as of late throughout the year with COVID, a lot of shelter at place, a lot of people taking advantage of that time at home and being able to work on some projects from home. So we're seeing a shortage of actually lumber right now, and I think we'll probably have a lumber specialist on, other than myself, here in the next couple of weeks.
Aren't you the lumber specialist?
I am, but some good company, and so I think we're going to dive into that here in a couple of weeks here. But right now, definitely seeing influx of unprecedented historical or trends compared to historical outlooks. But when we're looking at what's happening right now with the overall economy, there's been some activity for the durable goods side.
We are recovering, are we not?
There's been some upward movement. So for durable goods, from in July compared to last month, the previous month, it's up 11.2% month over month. So that is a substantial rise, although it's still down 12.1% year over year. Not quite at the year ago levels, but momentum is building pretty significantly. And when we're looking at the two sectors between consumers and between industrial activity, there has been a divergent trend, but we are starting to see some upward movement in manufacturing or in machinery. Of course, we have to look at this on a month-to-month basis, but when we're looking at computers and electronics, orders have passed year-ago levels, up 2.2% and up 1.3% on a year-over-year basis.
Have we been higher year-over-year for the last 2 months now on electronics?
For electronics.
Yeah, I thought so. So the consumers, this is kind of the story that we've been experiencing, is that those consumables, consumer electronics, home improvement goods have really been dragging along a lot of what we're seeing in the freight market, the economy in general, while industrial sector still trying to work its way back.
Yeah, and
still a long way to go.
It's been that way even before COVID. I mean, but to that point, when we're looking at motor vehicles and parts, that's up 21.9% month over month. Of course, it's still down 21% year over year, but that month to month movement is what I think a lot of people are going to be really excited about. So really, the consumer-facing segments are really, like you said, been really carrying the momentum. Manufacturing, when we're looking at non-defense capital goods, new orders excluding aircraft, that's moved up 1.9% month to month, and so we can kind of see some of that momentum building. It's not quite there yet, but it's all moving in the right direction. One of those big components from that, machinery orders up 2% month to month, but down 5.2% year over year. But again, this is for the month of July. We're almost in September. And so that there's that separation between of what's those secure macroeconomic numbers compared to what we're seeing real time or near real time on the roads right now. And I think someone that is near and dear to my heart, Zach, my cousin, Chris Bryant, is here with us, who can probably tell us a little bit more about what he's actually seeing in the trenches. Chris?
Hey, how you doing? You guys got me there? I'm live?
You're on. Chris,
There
thanks
he
so
is.
much for joining us today. Real quick, why don't you just give us an introduction?
Well, my name is Chris. I haul predominantly open deck, step deck, and RGM material. Been doing this for about 8 years now, and I've seen the market take its rises and its dives. I run mainly East Coast and Midwest. I don't go too far out West California, Utah, and stuff like that, but mainly East and Midwest in the South.
Excellent.
Yeah, anything that can go on top of a flatbed, I'm trying to haul it.
Excellent. And as you said, you've been in the industry for 8 years now. So, Zach, definitely been some ups and downs over the last 8 years. So, as you said, you've definitely seen some variances over the last couple of years, especially this year, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Chris.
just from last year to this spring, we're talking August to March. It was a traumatic dip, and it seems like now it's trying to fight its way up the ropes.
How's your what was your experience? I mean, flatbed has been a little bit disconnected from some of the other modes over the last couple of months. How's your experience been? What was your experience with the freight market? Have you seen increasing volumes? Obviously, everybody in April was basically shut down. But what have you seen, say, May, June, July to now?
Yeah, so March and April, it started falling dramatically, and everybody was scrambling. Some people even closed the doors, but I'd say about late April, May. It's like a stick of dynamite exploded, and everybody just started having freight released. And I was just here for the ride. I stayed out the whole time during the quarantine being initiated up until now. As far as like continuously working. So when that influx of freight started, you started seeing machinery, John Deere. They kicked up their market because they still had back orders, and I guess COVID kind of stopped all shipping and manufacturing. You had John Deere in Des Moines, Iowa, Waterloo, Davenport Works. They were shutting down, staggering 2 weeks at a time. 2 weeks at a time, they were staggering, closing and opening, closing and opening. So once they got a handle on all these phases and stuff like that, I guess that was around the April, Mayish time. Everything just opened back up. A lot of steel, aluminum took a big hit. Arconic or Alcoa, they're a big aluminum carrier for the flatbed industry, and they shut down a lot of their big Ford motor plant was closed down up in Dearborn, Michigan. They closed down. That took a heavy hit on the aluminum side, and that's a major commodity to ship on flatbed in America, steel and aluminum. And so after a while, it's picked back up, and it's still slowly right now ballooning. So we're just out here now hoping that the balloon never pops again.
And so, Chris, you just mentioned that, you saw some heavy duty machinery kind of picking up and ballooning somewhat, but what are you seeing lately? Has it still been some of those machinery, or is it still some consumer-led goods that's actually being hauled throughout the country?
A mixture of both. While I'm traveling down the road, I still see a large majority of machinery construction because it coincides hand in hand. The consumers buy and the constructors need equipment to install. Like for the last, I'd say about 2.5 months, I've been hauling swimming pools, in-ground swimming pool molds for homes. So with that, you don't just, pull up to someone's doorstep and say, here's a 40-foot long, 16 wide pool.
Right.
You get your aunts and uncles out here to help take it off. You got to have the contractor. He's out there with a crane or an excavator to, lift it off, dig the holes and stuff like that, and PVC pipes included. So there's a lot of different commodities that's provided for the flatbed and overhauling industry that involves just one delivery. So everybody, each hand, one hand washes the other, both hands wash the face type deal.
Right, right. And when you're looking at right now, as of late, how's optionality looking on your side? Are you still getting a lot of opportunities, or are you kind of just jumping at whatever can get hauled?
Well, the optionality is it's getting wider. I can say that it's getting wider. Like here, when I look for loads myself, I have the option now from the March-April era that we faced this year to say, oh well, I don't want to haul that freight. I can look for something else, or I can take an hour or two to keep looking for what I want. As into where March or April. I mean, you seen something on the board and you're like, I need to take that now. I
Right.
got to take it because I can't sit. So that was that time of I don't want to sit. Now it's a time of well, tomorrow there may be a better load.
Got you. Got you. And when you're looking at rates right now, how is it compared to, I guess, earlier pre-pandemic levels, or even compared to last year?
Well, pre-pandemic, of course, the rates were a little bit better than they were in March. Because I want to say rates dropped down to the lowest point. I mean, you were seeing over dimensional loads at regular flatbed load rates, and then you're seeing flatbed rates at dry-van rates. It's like everything stepped downward. And so now everything is kind of normalizing out now. It's still kind of low, but everything is kind of normalizing out now.
So, yeah, I mean, would you say the flatbed market before COVID, and again, I'm talking about this from a lot of people may not understand the dynamic between dry van, flatbed, and reefer. Some of the people that are listening, explain kind of what you mean when you say that flatbed was moving at dry van rates. Typically, we see pretty volatile and flatbed rates being higher than dry van, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So, where if you look at a dry van rate, you kind of For me, hauling open deck, I would look at a driving rate and almost get sick to my stomach because we're used to that range of like a even on the lower end, we want to look for like $1.95 at the absolute lowest. Like, and we're still discussing at that because there's so much included in just running a flatbed or a step deck or RGM because it's not, just open the doors and load your cargo. So we have other equipment expenses that come along with hauling freight and cargo. So, uh, yeah, so the driving rates, they have their uh, $1.25 to like $1.60 range because they're more on a per mile basis. But when you jump from $1.95 to a 270 range down to that driving rate, now you're sitting there with your head spinning like, how am I gonna pay my bills? Like if I drive and I have a low pro step deck right now and I blow a tire that costs $500,
Right.
What am I supposed to do with this $1.40 rate? That half that rate's already gone in the tire. But we were faced with a decision: either we make money or stay at home and don't make money type deal. And the country had to keep moving, whether we wanted to or not.
Right on. And so would you say that the rates now have surpassed the dry van side on the flatbed again?
Oh
Or
yes, yes,
okay.
yes, they have.
All right, so that we've pulled back into a more normal environment where flatbedders, and again, flatbed is real work out there. You got to get off, you got to get out of that cab, and make sure that stuff's strapped in. We always used to joke about the flatbedders are a different sort.
Yeah.
You got to get out there and be willing to move. Unlike a lot of these dry van and reefer carriers out there. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not to knock them off. It's truck drivers be truck drivers. They have their jokes and stuff like that, but they're just as vital to the industry as we are. But it's a little bit more labor intensive on the open deck side. I mean, there's strapping, tarping. We all hate the tarp, so it's just something that has to be done because nobody wants to order a truckload of lumber and then by the time it gets to the consumer, it's all swollen up because it got wet. Or automotive plant orders aluminum with steel core.
And so,
yeah, it looks like we lost the audio for a minute.
We lost the audio for a minute, but I think we're coming up. I'm not sure if we can pull him back, but it definitely sounds like Chris has seen a wide range of economic activity from the road firsthand.
It's interesting to me because he's obviously, and I hope he comes back so we can ask him a few more questions about the type of freight that he's hauling because I was trying to build into that a little bit more. But he was talking about aluminum early on and steel, and flatbedders haul a lot of raw materials,
right?
And that's why we connect them a lot to that industrial economy. But he was also talking about, all right, it sounds like we got Chris back.
Excellent.
So I finished my thought. So it sounds like we're getting a little bit more of that raw materials, but again, some of those factory shutdowns earlier in the year really may have just created this pent up demand. To an extent. And Chris, we got you back here.
Yep, I'm back.
All right. So sorry, we lost. Wonderful technology. 2020 hasn't seen anything change there. So right. Something I wanted to ask is, so you've seen more activity here over the last month or so. Do you see it slowing down at all? Are you starting to see, any signs of weakness, or, there's still this economic concern, overriding concern that unemployment and all these other factors that it's still showing signs that we're not all the way back. Are you seeing any sign of any kind of slowing?
Honestly, I can see a plateau right now, but as far as like slowing down and diving back to where we were, I don't see that at all.
Right on.
Because like I said, I just delivered 4 pools, and it blew my mind when I tapped into this type of cargo to ship. I'm like, we're in the midst of a pandemic, but people are buying 40-foot pool inserts for in-ground pool. I mean, and they're moving them so fast. I'm doing at least 2 loads a week on within a 900-mile radius, and they just keep. Are you coming back to pick another load up? We got to get these pools moved out. And I'm like, wow. The demand for something so expensive in the midst of a pandemic, I would never have thought would happen. So as long as the consumers keep buying, I feel like the industry will keep surviving.
Right on. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, obviously people sitting at home now, whereas they were going to work. Now it's like, I could put in that pool.
Yeah.
I could do this. I know a lot of the OEMs, for recreational vehicles, such, RVs, boats, four-wheelers, they're all on tremendous back order.
Yeah.
Are you hauling any of that right now?
No, I try to stay away from any automotive and things like that. But like I said, as far as machinery, John Deere, Case, New Holland, Kubota, I tap into stuff like that. But as far as like four-wheelers, and I consider those too much of a liability. I try to keep those away from my trailers.
Okay.
Nobody's going to try to come and try to steal a pool off my truck. You know what I mean?
Right. Or you'll see them coming, that's for sure.
Right.
And Chris, last question on my end. I'm curious to know if there are any nuances or industry changes that you think are going to be long-lasting after the pandemic's over.
And I think that's more so based on if we tend to kind of stay in the area of more people working from home, when more people can stay at home, because I feel like when more people can stay at home, they consume more. So when they consume more, they sit at home, like you said, I can put this pool in, I can build this fence, let me build a cabinet, let me build a shelf. So as long as people can stay where they are steadily consuming and not distracted by going to work for 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day, then the trucking industry will stay booming right now. But as soon as they get that distraction of, I got to go to work, then they'll slow down. Certain industries will stay open, like, the car industry, the car haul industry will stay good because everybody has to get that new upgrade every year.
Right.
But as far as like consumer goods, they need to be undistracted to consume.
Right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining in. It's been an honor and an absolute pleasure to have you. We hope to have you on again soon. Please stay safe out there, and I'll probably follow up with you right after this podcast is over.
Yes. Yeah, thanks so much, Chris.
That's a good one. That's always good to be at the alley. I seems that COVID got me standing at the street now. So,
right on.
I'll be in touch with you guys. You guys keep in touch with me.
Definitely.
Right on, man. Yeah, come back for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, the lesson here is that things are coming back. They're coming back strong. Yeah. We don't see a real sign of slowing. I think it's interesting that he said things are plateauing. He obviously can only handle so much freight at any given moment. He is one guy, one owner operator. So, but he seems to have a very consistent amount of freight. Now, real quickly, because we're running up on time here, we still have this overriding concern about, months into the future. I think we're all comfortable with knowing that here over the next month or two, we're still going to have a lot of volume. Capacity is going to remain tight, but unemployment still an issue.
Yeah, big time.
Do you think do we need another stimulus to get us over the hump for sure? Because I saw the other day, double dip recession concerns.
Yeah, I think with or without another stimulus, there's definitely going to be a season of sobering coming up soon next year. I think we'll finish out the year, I think, at a stronger pace than what we started off in the first and second quarter. So I think the second half of the year is going to be stronger for sure. But there are definitely those risks of a double dip recession if consumers don't keep consuming and if we don't have that kind of momentum. Definitely with the unemployment, those are huge concerns. And what we've seen with the lack of additional stimulus checks, that might provoke or might push more individuals to get back into that workforce if there are jobs out there for us. But I think definitely those risks are real. But I think throughout the end of the year, we should be good to go.
All right. Well, you heard it here, our lead economist. I'll defer to you on that one. And thank you so much for watching. Be sure to stay tuned every week at 2 p.m. for Freightonomics.
That's right.
Everybody stay safe out there and watch the Weather Channel if you live in Louisiana.
Yeah. We got our very own Nick Austin.
I know. Nick Austin will keep you updated.
Can't believe we had Chris on the show.
That was great.